Well, you know, what's funny is a lot of people do say that because they're like, wow, you did a lot of jobs. But the good thing about when you have multiple hats, what I always tell people is make sure that it's on one side of the camera. I think it becomes complicated when you're trying to perform and direct and, like, you know, be back and forth. But when you're behind the scenes, you build a team that really knows what you like and what you like to do as far as a filmmaker. And then when you have to put more focus on one thing, like when it comes into actual production, I'm more just directing. But in pre-production, I'm, you know, producing, you know, I'm making script revisions as a writer and all of these kind of things. But when it comes to actual production, I'm just focusing on directing. I'm not focusing on producing as much. I'm not focusing on, you know, and at that point, the script has become what it's going to be. So if there's a script change or if there's something you have to, make do with, it's like rewriting on the spot is what directors do anyways. So it's one of those things where it's like, that's part of that territory. And then in post-production, I just become an editor. I remove myself as the writer. I remove myself as the director. And I say, hey, this is what's going to be entertaining. This is what people are going to get. And does it make sense? And I kind of try and do that so that I can wear all these hats, but wear them efficiently. Like, it's definitely intense. Like, it's an intense movie. And I wanted, you know what, I really loved movies like, you know, The Godfather and, you know, that mafia genre that is really an interesting world where it's like when you do pull the curtain back, some of these things that they do to these people that, you know, turn on them and or that go against like their family code, it does get pretty violent, you know. And I really wanted to make something that was like a modern day classic. So it felt like you were watching those old mafia films, but then again, it felt present and new to a younger generation because the attention span of kids these days is not what it used to be. And it's like a lot of them like that like energy and stuff going on and shoot 'em up and all of this kind of stuff. So I wanted to have that independent feel, that story, tell that story, but then surrounded in stuff that really draws audiences in today's audience, I should say. I didn't witness any of that. And it was funny. It's funny you said that because when Eva Tamargo, who plays Catalina in the script, when she read it, she was like, are you from the streets? Like, are you Italian and all these kind of stuff? And I was like, no, actually, no, I'm not. You know, I just have a very active imagination. It's one of those movies that has a lot of twists and turns in it, but to encompass it in one whole kind of log line, I guess you could say, is the film tells the story of the last crime syndicate in Detroit. And then the mysteries and betrayal that like devours the trust that holds them together. And it's kind of built around that thing. Like if you have trust in somebody, there's peace. But once you lose trust, it's like nothing will ever be the same. And so the movie takes place when the family loses an informant that they had that was supposedly spying on the family. And at that point, after they lose that informant, becomes all these things of like, how did he get away? Who was involved? And then also too, what secrets are going to now be revealed with this happening. So the movie almost takes place in a moment. It doesn't necessarily take place over like a period of like time like a lot of old mafia films used to do, where it'd be like 7 years or 15 years and you see this whole family like change dynamic. It literally takes place in a moment. So, and it surrounds this informant getting lost. Yeah, actually, it very much is. I actually did research on the Detroit Mafia and exactly like what their big, and it's hard because I don't want to necessarily give away thing. I know this is going to be like in an article and stuff like that. I don't want to give away like, you know, spoilers, but I actually did research on what their big money maker was. And so when you're watching the film and all this kind of stuff, that's literally what they would do. And they would have these businesses that would, you know, cover the books for all this other transactions that they were actually doing. Everybody in the families would be involved. You'd have this person, you know, giving advice, this person handling the books, this person handling, you know, the street talk and stuff. And that's really how it did work. And then you'd have the people traveling all over, you know, to make sure these transactions happen. And now, of course, in modern day times, it's really a dying, like, thing. Like, there's not a lot of it going on. Like, you don't hear about the mafia and all that kind of stuff like you used to back in the day. So that's kind of where it becomes very fictitious. because something like this may not necessarily happen in today's world, but it's kind of like that's where it becomes that modern day classic. I definitely, when it comes to betrayal, I absolutely think so. I mean, that's just what I believe. I mean, I think, like, the Dons are the types of characters where they don't, everyone just fears them, but they don't know why. So in that moment where, like, something extreme happens, like, for instance, in our film, it opens up with this betrayal and all of this kind of stuff. In order to keep his power and show his, intimidation factor, he kind of has to do something extreme. And that opening scene was actually a lot more graphic than it ended up being in the movie. And we actually toned it back a bit because we were like, this is way too intense. People are going to think this is a horror film. But, we did pull it back. But we wanted to make sure that throughout the movie, you're not going to see Francis do much more, but we're going to open up showing why he is the Don. You know what I'm saying? And I think that in that time period, that's how they gain that kind of power, is just through intimidation. Hard work, honestly. I get that this question actually a lot. And I've always known I wanted to be a filmmaker. I loved movies as a kid. Jurassic Park was my favorite film. I actually thought it was a real movie. I mean, I thought it was a real, this was really happening, like the news. And I'm like, why aren't these people getting help? Like, why is nobody helping them? And my mom bought me the making of Jurassic Park. And right then when I realized that people actually did this for a living, I was like, oh my gosh, like, I have to be that. And ever since I was 8 years old, I've only wanted to be a filmmaker. And honestly, it was just making film after film after film and learning from each one to bring me to where I am today. I've never had anybody in the business. I never knew anybody. When I moved to California, I literally packed up my car with what could fit in my car and drove out here, and went to school. I actually did 2 years of film school in Arizona because I had a full ride film scholarship there. And then once I finished my 2 years there, applied for scholarships out here in California, and I got a few. And so I just drove out here what could fit in my car, and I didn't know a soul. And that was about 8 years ago, and now I'm here today, just working hard.